like a tide, a current you can't deny, and eventually it wears you down.
Call George Knapp.
Calling George Knapp, mobile.
Hey, George.
Hey, man.
What's up, man? How you doing?
All right. What's going on?
This is now 30 years since you initially broke the story of Bob Lazar. So, I mean, the amount of information is overwhelming, and I just want to go over with you some of the details of the case.
Sure.
We're talking about UFOs, alien craft, back engineering, and there's Lazar saying he did all of that, and from what I understand, it's spread everywhere.
Yeah, you know, we had the first interview in May of 1989 with him as Dennis. Not his real identity, not known, not revealed to the audience. And even that, before we know who Bob Lazar was, that sparked a great deal of interest among the public. I spent the 8 months between May and November trying to verify Bob's background to see if we could solidify the case, to see if we could find out if he was telling the truth. And then the plan was to unleash it in November, which is what we did. It was the highest rated news series we've ever done. It was the highest rated news special that ever aired in Las Vegas. And then it really exploded. It went all over the world. Bootleg copies of the tapes were being sold and shown in movie theaters. You had media interest from all over the world. And I think a lot of it was skeptical at the beginning, which of course it would be. But in the end, every major news organization in the world beat a path to Area 51's door. And tens of thousands of people started showing up out there to see whatever it was that was flying around in the desert. They're still coming all these years later. And I know a lot of my media colleagues have had problems with that story, but they've all covered it, all of them. You put Area 51 on the map. It's now known all over the world. Even though Lazar worked at S4, Area 51 is the term that the public knows. So it was huge. It was huge then, it's huge now.
The mountains appear to float on dry lake beds, like spaceships from another world. They seem to ride on a viscous material, channeled through empty space by heat that rises and separates. It vitrifies everything it contacts, like a green glass honey. A goddamn psychedelic liquid drowning the emptiness with imagination. This desert is pocked and punctuated by 1,000 gaping holes, created in 1,000 atomic blasts that define an era. What are they building in the desert north of Las Vegas? What are they hiding? What are they hiding? Fuck are they hiding?
Yeah.
What is your name and what's your relationship to Bob Lazar?
My name is Mario Santa Cruz, and I met Bob actually in my neighborhood. He lived like one block over. My attraction to Bob was his jet dragster. So I saw this jet dragster sitting out in front of his house in our neighborhood, which was extremely, just the jet dragster alone was rare. But in my neighborhood, to see something like that was unbelievable.
People were harassing Bob, threatening him, and you were with him in one of those experiences, at least one.
A couple of times, actually. I actually had a weapon with me, you know, when we rode together, because he had been shot at, you know.
Was the weapon, was it the Uzi?
Yes.
Yeah. so when...
I don't know why I'm being so careful. I'm used to being that way when it comes to talking about Bob, being careful what I say. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a force of habit to kind of just walk on eggshells a little bit. He just wanted to stay alive. That's why he exposed himself. His life was in chaos. How he pulled out of it, you know, he dug deep. It's a pretty incredible story.
They shot at you? Somebody shot? Maybe as a warning, perhaps? It was a good warning. I had my back tire shot out on my car as I was getting on the freeway.
Saw the guy.
Yeah.
Is this a secret worth killing to keep? I mean, the government, would you say?
Obviously. But in fact, the only reason that getting this on tape is insurance.
Well, that's one reason. But I mean, also as an American citizen, you're bothered by that this stuff is going on, and
yeah, I am, but not enough to have, stood here and have it on the record. Insurance is the true motivation behind this.
About 4 months old, in our little apartment in Florida, and that's me holding him. Very proud mom holding him. We had a beautiful little place in Florida. Look at that. One Sunday morning, must have been about 6 o'clock in the morning, everyone is sleeping with this huge bang. Bob had put a jet engine in the bike. At 6 in the morning, he decided to take it out for a trip.
What did you guys think when he said, Mom, Dad, I'm building it?
Scared out of my mind. I didn't know what he was going to do next. Was he going to blow up the house, blow up the world? I don't know.
It's out there,
He's out there.
If he proves his story, let's say, maybe it would cause problems. Maybe it would blow shit up.
It more than likely it would. But he's best off keeping things on the low, down low, really.
But at the same time, he has said there is a way he could prove his story. And
I want him to be happy. If vindication is what he wants, fine. But that's up to him. You believe him or not? It's a fearful thing to think that there's something out there that we don't know anything about. Or are they dangerous? Can they hurt us? Will they attack us? You don't want to know, so you don't believe it. You'd rather not believe. There might be other things out there, other things in the universe. There has to be. We can't be all by ourselves. We can't be.
My name is Joy, and I am Bob's wife. We've been together, it'll be 17 years.
what is it that you think is most misunderstood?
That he really is an honest guy. He doesn't make stuff up.
I guess it's just so big. So the easier thing to do is to point the finger and say liar.
Yeah, that's so sad. That's really sad. That they don't know real Bob.
There's particular moments that define each one of us. We may not know it at the time, but we learn it later. Every action creates a cascade of reactions. Life is a web of events. Actions overlaid by consequence. And woven across the fabric of time. Future determined by past. Past defined by present. Present experienced throughout the lens of personal history. But for some, it's obvious. You could put your finger on it. That definable, indelible moment when everything changed.
I love my job. There's a lot of craftsmanship in the stuff that I do. I really like working with my hands. It's a really unique job. I don't think there's any other job where you get to do this kind of stuff every day. We'll either get a really interesting order coming in, or Bob will get bored and try to come up with a new product, and that's when it gets really fun. So there's another one that he wants to do, like recreate a grand atomic chemistry set, something of that sort, and I think that would be really cool if he ever decides to really hone in on that.
This is the Atomic Energy Lab kit. It's something from the 1950s, a toy, like a chemistry set you get for your kid. It was made by Gilbert.
Chemistry is today a fascinating adventure for youth of all ages. Gilbert has made this exciting science available in safe and easy-to-understand form. made as completely safe as human ingenuity can devise.
This actually came with radioactive material. You could really conduct atomic energy experiments in it. It was fascinating. And it was billed as the most dangerous toy ever made, and still, in some respects, is still considered that way today. But the thing is, it wasn't. It was just people's fear.
So here I am, and I'm watching you do your work. When people don't know you, it's so easy for them to just make shit up about you and to dehumanize you. How simple that is to do. The fact that somebody would say you're not a scientist.
I mean, all I've ever done is science-related stuff my entire life. So, I don't know, I guess the point is, do I really care what
maybe Sandeep will
people
hear
I
this.
don't know think? And probably to some extent I do.
He'll probably watching it, probably a subscriber under about 2-3 different names, so he can.
I guess it is easier to discredit someone that you have no information on, because you can just say anything about them and there's nothing to refute it. I feel privileged I got to work in it. So, in some respects, I shouldn't be allowed to complain. I've given the example of transporting a small modern-day portable nuclear reactor back into Victorian times and giving it to the scientists there. Well, back in that time, they didn't even know about radiation. So they'd see a machine making power, kind of like what we're doing, and marvel at it. Wow, it's producing a lot of power. There's no smokestack, there's no coal, there's no fuel. How is this thing working? And they start taking it apart. Well, they'll all die as soon as they get close to the core. People that come in to check on them will all die. And no one knows, nothing touched them, so they're going to think it's haunted or something. There's some evil forces or something in there. But, who says that can't happen to us? The first time Barrett showed me the reactor in operation, here it is on the bench. And he said, try and touch the sphere on top. And you couldn't, your hand was pushed away. Just like, 2 light poles of a magnet. It's the exact same feeling, but it was no metal involved. And that's shocking. That's really shocking, because nothing does that. That's an operating, powerful force field. So just seeing something like that immediately starts that whole chain reaction in your mind going, wow, wait, if you can do this, there can be force fields on tanks. There can be things that lift off the ground. We don't need jet and rocket engines anymore. That means there's no use for cars. Boom, the whole thing changes. The entire world, the economy, everything would go end on end just if we had an answer to how that machine worked that I was sitting there touching.
The potential for us to re-understand human experience is...
Right. There's life somewhere else. It's a big deal. It's an important part of human history that we found that out. It was awesome, but fearsome at the same time. It was being completely fucking scared all day long. It's not exactly the most fun job when you're there. Almost 3 decades later, the fear drops off and you're just left with the amazement and technology that you were exposed to. We have, an artifact here from another civilization. It really changes the way a lot of people think. We're all looking for an answer. Having physical proof is an awful big deal.
I think what a lot of people find really compelling about Bob, he legitimately appears sometimes just perplexed by what he saw. Have you noticed that kind of about him?
Yeah, he was aware that this was weird. He was aware it was weird that they hired him. He's a smart guy and he thinks outside the box. So in a lot of ways, he might have been just exactly what they needed for a program that seemed to be stalled. But he knew that he wasn't their kind of a guy, that they could have had their pick of any scientists in the world, presumably, to work on this. So it was strange, and it was strange that they started showing him these briefing books with this incredibly sensitive information right off the bat. As soon as he gets there, they start showing him this stuff with alien bodies broken down so you can see their organs and the history of human-alien interaction and all kinds of things that the UFO community had suspected, but no one could prove. And he just thought it was weird that anyone would show him this stuff. He wondered what the heck was going on. I think he was thrilled. You know, part of him was really thrilled to be there and thrilled to see it, even if it turned out to be some kind of a ruse. You know, he knew that something was not quite right about the whole thing, or suspected that anyway.
You were telling people since 1989 that there was some sort of hand scanner. There was like a bone scanner, and you tried to describe it. You said you think it took measurements of the bone. There were these pegs. You put your hand on it.
It's a small plate with some pins on it that you can put between your fingers. There's a bright light above it. The interesting thing is when you walk into the facility, or even to leave, they have a hand reader. I was told that it has to do something where it measures the bright light measures the bones in your finger. They're unique to each person. It sounds like something out of a TV show, but it's exactly the way it is.
Man, I looked for that kind of thing all over the internet, never found anything. And then all of a sudden this article comes out and it says that at the Nellis Range they were talking about the stealth program, there was indeed this hand scanner that was used in these secret programs, and they just admitted or announced it publicly. And there were some photos, and I just was interested. And so
I never thought I'd see one of these again. But I tried to explain this to people so many times, and they either didn't believe me or say, yeah, I'm sure there is. And
one of those
there it is.
TV show Making Money.
It's like a biometric
Phoenix,
thing.
Arizona.
The beginnings of, I mean, it wasn't all that advanced back then, but that's it. I can't believe you found a picture of this. I really can't. This was the scanner used to get in to S4. And I tried to explain this to people so many times, that there was pins in, you stuck your hand, a light above, and it supposedly measured the length of the bones in your hand that, it's unique in each individual. It's exactly how it was. Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing you came up with these. It's amazing to see this again. Back then, this was the hot ticket.
What does it feel like when these little things that you said become public and there's this tiny bit of vindication?
It is. There's little moments of vindication, little pieces here and there that, little I told you so's, pop up every couple of years or so. But this is a big one. So a lot of people said these didn't exist, and, it was some just fanciful thing I came up with. But this is exactly it.
Lots of vitamins A and C, and only 45 calories a serving. Good morning indeed. V8, the original flat-powered drink. Veg up.
At Windstar World Casino and Resort, going all in will lead you on a greater adventure. And to uncover something extraordinary, you just have to explore.
Elevate your endorphins and your wellness at 24-Hour Fitness. With membership starting at $9.99 a month, you can breathe easier. Find your flow. Your endorphins will thank you. 24-Hour Fitness. Exercise you're happy.
This is exactly it.
Ideas are the most dangerous weapons on the planet. They creep under your skin, dormant, volatile, explosive. They attach to our collective consciousness, and then one day, they bubble to the surface to assert their power. immediately know we're always wrong. We're always fucking wrong.
I do not believe that this should be a security matter. Some of it, sure. But just the concept that there's definite proof, we even have articles from another world, another system. You just can't not tell everyone.
Checking out Lazar's credentials proved to be a difficult task. He says he earned degrees in physics and electronics, but the schools we contacted say they've never heard of him. He also said he worked as a physicist at Los Alamos National Lab, where he experimented with one of the world's largest particle beam accelerators, a half-mile-long behemoth capable of generating 700 million volts. Los Alamos officials told us they had no records of a Robert Lazar ever working there. They were either mistaken or were lying. A 1982 phone book from the lab lists Lazar right there among the other scientists and technicians. A 1982 clipping from the Los Alamos newspaper profiled Lazar and his interest in jet cars. It too mentioned his employment at the lab as a physicist. We called Los Alamos again. An exasperated official told us he still had no records on Lazar. EG&G, which is where Lazar says he was interviewed for the job at S4, also has no records. It's as if someone has made him disappear.
One thing that people say about your story and your experience is that you were a puppet, a marionette, that you had no control over what was going on at that time, that you were taken advantage, you were compromised, and you're being used as a source of disinformation.
And what evidence to support that?
Right.
And what's the evidence to support those claims? Is that just something to say?
No, I'm just saying that's the kind
of thing. If you make a statement, you have to have some evidence to say where the statement came from. You're basing it on emotion,
right?
And fear, and you're afraid that I'm right. Tell me what you've heard that makes this impossible. I'm trying to tell you exactly the way things work. Where is it? Show me the alternate reality that you believe that doesn't lock up with my actual reality. I mean, where are those other facts? Just show me what they are. These facts you grabbed together and painted a different story of my life than I did. I mean, I thought I set the record straight 30 years ago.
Can we ever be made whole if we're not believed? If our life story is challenged by a consensus? Most of us are not forced to answer for our past. We can freely navigate this moment with reverence for what came before. But some people are placed under a microscope. Their words, their actions, scrutinized and challenged. And then they're told to quiet lies. How much can a man take before he submits to the weight and consequence of distrust? Does he fade back into the shadows that formed him? Or does he lash out to carve his words into your flesh, to carve his words into your flesh?
I don't know, what else can I say? What else can I say? How can I prove anything else?
At the worst case scenario, you lied for a girl or you lied to get a job. What does that mean about your story?
Do you think Los Alamos just hired me out of high school? If you don't think that's possible, then something had to happen in between. I don't understand how everybody gets so caught up in the minutia. Because you can debate that stuff forever. We can go back before MIT. And you can start fighting whether or not and where I lived in high school. That is not going to translate into answering the questions and the things that I've brought into the public eye. That's the important stuff. It almost seems like this is an intentional distraction. You need to pay attention to the bigger picture. If you really want to research all the other stuff, fine, go ahead and do it. But you really need to pay attention to what I'm saying. Because I have better things to do than come up with this. I'm not interested in doing this. I don't like being in the public eye. I don't got money for doing this. And quite frankly, I could make up a better lie. But I have no motivation to lie. This hasn't helped me out.
What does that mean for Lazar's story that we can't prove his schooling? In fact,
it was a problem. I mean, I wondered, can we go forward if we can't verify what was going on in his background? The central point for me was, if he worked at Los Alamos, that suggests he had to have an education somewhere. I think he said it to me a couple of times. What do you think? They hired me right out of high school. I looked at people who knew him back then. Jim Taliani, for one, who said that, yeah, Bob went to Caltech back then. I dropped him off. I interviewed another person who also knew Bob then and said that he would drop him off at Caltech, would pick him up from the library, that if he wasn't going to school there, he sure was making a good show of it back then. Would it prove his story about working on flying saucers if he could show he had degrees from Caltech and MIT? No, of course not. It would not prove that he worked on flying saucers. It would just prove that he went to school. The people who despise him and who doubt the story the most, the debunkers, would find something else to bitch about. Bob got into some trouble after he became a worldwide UFO celebrity. He did a typical Bob sort of a thing and got mixed up with some hookers. He was helping them set up a little mini brothel in a neighborhood. And when he told me about it, I thought, oh my gosh, my professional life is flashing before my eyes here. The most high-profile witness and the biggest story I've ever done is now telling me he's involved in this criminal enterprise. He kind of thought it was funny. But it wasn't funny to me, so I said, you got to stop this stuff. You got to shut this down. I called the cops. I let some people know, look, he made a mistake. It's being shut down. They raided the place, arrested Bob. And in those days, there weren't many people who were ever prosecuted and arrested for pandering. Lazar was. So, parole and probation, they're doing a background investigation, and they're going to make a recommendation to the court what the sentence should be for his crimes. He tells them the same story, where he went to school, where he worked, S4, MIT, Caltech, all that. And they investigated. They were having the same problems that I was having. They couldn't verify a lot of this stuff. If Bob truly was a UFO con man, that was the time to come clean. Because parole and probation was ticked off. They thought he was misleading them. And as a result of that, they did recommend that he do hard time, go to prison. He knew it. That was the time for him to come clean, because it was a much better chance that he would not be sent to prison. He didn't. He stuck to his story. He told them the same story that he told me. That went a long way for me in showing that he had been telling the truth, because it was definitely in his own self-interest to fess up at that point. And that's not what he did. He stuck to his guns. Here's the thing. Okay, I can see Bob Lazar pranks the UFO world and the UFO community. I can see him doing something like that. But does he lie to his mom and dad? Does he lie to his wife? Does he lie to all of his close friends and tell them the same story and try to get away with it? You look back on the people who knew him while this was going on, who knew him before he was hired to work out at S4, who knew him during the time he was going back and forth out there, and who stuck by him after this whirlwind of international publicity kind of rained down on his head. Everyone who knew him, everyone who was supposed to him, supports his story and says he's telling the truth.
We saw something up there that you think might have been.
I really hate to say stuff that I can't put my hands on and say this is absolutely for sure.
What did you say?
I walked down the hallway at one time I was working out there, and there were doors. The doors that go to the hangars, the smaller doors from the corridors, have a 9-inch or 12-inch square window with little wires running through it, just about head level. And as I was walking by, I just glanced in and I noticed, at a quick glance, there were two guys in white lab coats facing me towards the door, and they were looking down and talking to something small with long arms. Now, I was just surprised as I walked by now, and I caught a glimpse, but I don't know what on earth that was.
People say you saw an alien. Did you see an alien at S4, Bob?
I don't think I saw an alien at S4. We're splitting the hairs here. This had to do with a glance through a window that I wasn't supposed to be looking at anyway. And I'm still convinced. I looked in the window, and I think these guys had a doll in a small chair, which was, similar to what was in the craft. And I think they were just looking at dimensions, and they put something in there. And I just took it at a glance, and it was just, something tiny sitting in the chair. I don't think there was an alien there posing for them. I think they just had a small character or something, doing measurements or something. Again, we're talking about, like a 400 millisecond glance. So now how much can you see out of that? I never saw any aliens walking around there. I never heard anybody saying anything about living aliens, so I don't think that was it.
But they did have a nickname for the aliens.
The kids. The kids.
Is someone else here? Maybe visitors interested in us? In our genes? In our souls? Maybe we're property, just a goddamn commodity. We're like livestock. Maybe they'd like our condors and cupcakes, the kimono or the top hat, who the fuck knows. Or maybe every single sighting of things in the sky is a product of our collective consciousness. A false hope that humanity desperately needs intervention by external powers. We've always looked to the skies for answers, instead of looking into ourselves.
All right, so at what point, describe the evolution of your knowledge here? I mean, did you realize that this thing that you're working on came out of a flying saucer?
Well, of course, I know that technology doesn't exist at all.
Why?
Well, it doesn't. Take my word for it. It's just technology that doesn't exist yet. I mean, you're talking about science doesn't even know what